Look at the tracking data we pulled for today's prep.
Yeah.
And one thing just becomes glaringly obvious right away.
Yeah.
If you are tuning into the Orange Ball today, Monday, March 2, 2026, you're watching a league that is, it's actively mutating.
It really is.
We are officially in the final regular season quadrant. The All-Star break is a fading memory. The buyout market is settling into its new homes, and the margin for error, it's completely vanished.
Gone. Completely gone.
Exactly. We have an absolutely massive agenda today. We are unpacking an 11-game Sunday slate that felt way more like mid-May than early March. We're debating the shifting tactical plates of the playoff race, digging into some incredibly spicy quotes and controversies from the weekend, and previewing a critical 4-game Monday slate. But before we get into the box scores, let's just talk about the macro picture. The notes you put together this morning paint a pretty, an intimidating picture for any team stuck in their old ways.
It is an adapt or die moment in the NBA right now. When you look across the landscape of the league, the days of, kind of easing into the second half of a back-to-back.
Oh, yeah, those are over.
Entirely over. But more importantly, the tactical standard has shifted. Extreme positional versatility is no longer a luxury for the elite teams. It is the absolute baseline requirement if you want to survive a playoff series. If your frontcourt players cannot seamlessly switch onto a lightning-fast perimeter guard, or if your backcourt players immediately collapse when a hybrid wing posts them up.
You didn't play off the floor.
Right off the floor. The target on the back of one-dimensional players has never been bigger. And hanging over all of this strategic evolution is an MVP race that is historically tight, featuring production numbers that are, frankly, breaking our analytical models. We are seeing efficiency and usage combinations that shouldn't mathematically coexist.
Which perfectly sets up the underlying theme we're seeing across all these source materials today. It's the death of the single dominant archetype. We're going to see that in the end of a massive 11-game winning streak inside Madison Square Garden. We're going to see it in a historic rookie assist record that just got tied down in Memphis. And unfortunately, we have to talk about how a catastrophic, season-altering injury blow to the Dallas Mavericks shifts the entire balance of power in the Western Conference.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It really is. Let's not waste any time. We start in MSG. The San Antonio Spurs roll into New York, riding an absolute high. They had an 11-game winning streak, looking totally invincible, humming on both ends of the floor. And the New York Knicks didn't just beat them, they decisively snapped that streak, taking them down 114-89. I'm looking at a 25-point margin of victory against the hottest team in basketball.
You really have to give immense credit to the defensive architecture New York executed here. They didn't just outscore San Antonio. They systematically dismantled their offensive rhythm.
I want to read through the statistical leaders first, and then I want you to break down how this actually happened. For the Knicks, Mikal Bridges was an absolute terror on the wing. He drops 25 points, hits 5 of 9 from three-point range, and racks up 5 steals. Jalen Brunson orchestrates the offense beautifully with 24 points and 7 assists, and Karl-Anthony Towns does the grueling work inside with 12 points and 14 rebounds.
That's a massive line against that front court.
Right. And on the Spurs side, Victor Wembanyama still gets his numbers on paper. 25 points, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks. Devin Vassell chips in 18 points. But the story here isn't the raw points. It's the efficiency and the sheer physical disruption.
That is the crucial takeaway right there. When you dive into the tactical breakdown of this game, you are looking at a masterclass in point-of-attack, physical wing defense by the Knicks. San Antonio thrives on rhythm. They rely on that beautiful, connective ball movement, and they use Wembanyama as the ultimate hub.
He touches it almost every possession.
Exactly. What New York did was deploy their wings, spearheaded by Bridges, to completely sever the connective tissue of the Spurs offense. They didn't wait for the Spurs to initiate their sets. They pressed up at half court. They aggressively denied the easy entry passes. They made every single catch a bruising physical battle. And you see the result in the efficiency gap. Knicks shot 44% overall and hit 17 threes. They spaced the floor perfectly, making San Antonio pay for collapsing. Meanwhile, that physical pressure held the Spurs to just 41% shooting from the floor.
Let's talk about the turnovers, because that's where the game was actually won. The Knicks forced 22 total turnovers, but here's the stat that jumps out. Victor Wembanyama accounted for 7 of those turnovers all by himself. I have to ask, how exactly do you force a generational talent, a guy with that kind of size and processing ability, to turn the ball over 7 times?
It comes down to understanding his mechanics. Bridges didn't just get 5 steals by playing the passing lanes. He fundamentally altered Wembanyama's dribble cadence. By pressing directly into his hip right on the catch, Bridges forced Wemby to put the ball on the floor a split second earlier than he wanted.
He rushed him.
Exactly. The insight here is that you don't try to block Wembanyama's shot. You disrupt his launch sequence. When you are turning over a player of his caliber 7 times, it means your weak side help defense is perfectly timed. It means you are crowding his dribble, stunting at the exact right moments, and making him second-guess his reads before he can elevate. Wembanyama's on-off defensive impact usually dictates the flow of the game, but the Knicks flipped the script and dictated the terms of engagement on him.
I hear what you were saying about the launch sequence, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. The Knicks are now 39-22, solidifying that 3 seed in the East. But was this a replicable blueprint for the playoffs? Or was this just a Tuesday night adrenaline rush fueled by the Madison Square Garden crowd?
It is absolutely replicable if you have the personnel, and that is why this game is so terrifying for the rest of the league. The Knicks are proving a concept to you and every other contender analyzing the tape. They are proving that elite, physical, point-of-attack wing defense can still disrupt a team built around a generational big man. They aren't just an Eastern Conference threat that beats you up in the half-court. Their style translates perfectly against the elite, space and pace juggernauts out west. They just sent a massive warning shot across the bow of the entire league.
While the Knicks proved that physical defense can break a superstar in the East out west, the Minnesota Timberwolves proved that sometimes the best defense is just running the other guys off the floor entirely. Let's move to a massive heavyweight clash. The Timberwolves take down the Denver Nuggets 117-108.
This was a fascinating tactical battle, purely because you had 2 incredibly distinct styles of play colliding head-on.
The stat lines here are ridiculous. For Minnesota, Anthony Edwards goes for 21 points and 6 assists. Jaden McDaniels is incredibly efficient, dropping 20 points on 9 of 12 shooting. Dante DiVincenzo bombs away from the perimeter for 17 points, hitting 5 threes. And Julius Randle chips in a solid 14 points and 9 rebounds. Then you look at Denver. Nikola Jokic does Nikola Jokic things. 35 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists. Jamal Murray adds 25 points. But Denver still loses by 9.
I'm looking at the box score here, and one number is jumping off the page. A 30-6 fast break disparity.
That right there is the defining metric of the night. A 30-6 fast break advantage is a 24-point swing simply based on pace and opportunistic running. Think about how staggering that is. Denver completely dominated the points in the paint, outscoring the Timberwolves 60-52 in the interior. Jokic was brilliant in isolation. He was punishing matchups, dissecting the half-court defense, and doing everything he usually does to control a game. But Chris Finch and the Timberwolves coaching staff clearly realized they could not beat David Edelman's set defense in a slow half-court slugfest. But wait, I have to push back on that. Is that 24-point swing simply Chris Finch's tactical genius pushing the pace? Or did Denver just have an uncharacteristically lazy night getting back on defense? You can't just let Anthony Edwards sprint to the corner unchecked 6 times a game.
It is a bit of both, but you have to credit Minnesota's intentionality. If you let Denver set their defense, they are massive across the front line. They are highly disciplined, and Jokic controls the entire tempo of the game like a metronome. Finch utilized a balanced, high-paced attack to bypass that entirely. When Minnesota got a stop, or even off long rebounds from contested Denver shots, they were pushing the ball up the floor relentlessly. Edwards, DiVincenzo, McDaniels, they were sprinting to the corners, filling the transition lanes with incredible urgency. By shooting 54.1% from the field and 38.9% from deep, Minnesota proved that high-level offensive efficiency combined with extreme pace can completely neutralize Denver's half-court size advantage.
You bypass Jokic's half-court orchestration by not letting him set up the chessboard in the first place.
Exactly. You force Denver to play a track meet, which is the one environment where their size becomes a liability.
It is brilliant intentional coaching. You essentially run the heavyweights off the floor before they can throw a punch. Let's pivot out to the West Coast and look at the LA Renaissance, because both Los Angeles teams put on absolute offensive explosions this weekend. Let's start with the Lakers. They host the Sacramento Kings and blow them out 128-104. This completes a weekend sweep of Northern California for the Lakers, moving them to 36-24.
The efficiency with which they are dismantling teams right now is what makes them so incredibly dangerous.
Luka Doncic is orchestrating an absolute masterpiece in purple and gold. He goes for 28 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds. LeBron James is hyper-efficient, dropping 24 points in only 26 minutes of action. And we have to highlight Marcus Smart's defensive impact here. He logged 5 steals in this game, just blowing up passing lanes everywhere.
The tactical trend you have to watch here is J.J. Redick's offensive system. Redick has this team humming on a frequency we haven't seen from them all year. The Lakers led by 22 points in the first half. They completely overwhelmed Sacramento's defense from the opening tip. Luka is operating what we call a heliocentric offense. Think of the solar system. Luka is the sun, and the other 4 players on the court are planets strictly orbiting his gravitational pull. Because Luka is such a brilliant primary initiator, it allows LeBron James to play almost entirely off the ball.
Which is a massive shift for LeBron at this stage of his career.
Precisely. LeBron gets to pick his spots, cut backdoor, spot up for open threes, and attack closeouts against a rotating defense rather than creating everything from scratch. That is why you see him scoring 24 points in just 26 minutes. That kind of efficiency keeps his legs fresh for the fourth quarter and for the playoffs. And when you surround those two elite basketball minds with a chaotic defensive element like Marcus Smart, who is generating extra possessions and fast breaks with his 5 steals, you get these massive early leads. By halftime, the opponent isn't just down on the scoreboard. They are completely demoralized by the relentless pressure.
It really feels like the Lakers have found their true identity. But they aren't the only LA team rolling. The Clippers host the Pelicans and put up a staggering 137 points in a 137-117 victory. Kawhi Leonard drops 23 points and posts a plus 25 rating while he is on the floor. Jordan Miller comes off the bench to add 19. Now, New Orleans got 28 points from Jay Fears in a losing effort, but the Clippers were just an unstoppable offensive machine.
Tyronn Lue put on an absolute coaching clinic in this game. The Pelicans have a very specific vulnerability in their interior defense, and Lue exploited it mercilessly with a high screen rotation. The Clippers kept putting the New Orleans bigs into these high pick-and-roll actions, forcing them to make impossible choices over and over again. Do you step up to stop the ball handler and leave the roll man diving to the rim? Or do you stay back in the paint and give up the open three-pointer?
And the result of putting them in that blender, Brick Lopez gets wide open looks all night and finishes with 16 points. Derrick Jones Jr. gets free runs to the rim and finishes with 17 points.
When your role players are feasting like that, it is a direct result of the gravitational pull of your stars and the brilliant design of your screens. The shooting splits tell the whole story. The Clippers shot a blistering 54% from the field and an incredible 47% from deep. Ty Lue essentially spaced the Pelicans to death on the perimeter while simultaneously punishing them right at the rim with Lopez and Jones Jr.
And for the listener tracking the playoff race, the standings implications here are massive. With this win, the Clippers snap a 3-game losing streak, moving to 28-31. They are maintaining a very fragile grip on the 10th seed play-in spot, just barely holding off the Memphis Grizzlies. Every single game for Ty Lue's squad right now is basically Game 7.
They are walking a razor-thin tightrope. But when Kawhi Leonard is a plus 25 and the offensive execution is that crisp, they show that their potential ceiling is vastly higher than their sub-.500 zero record suggests. They are a team nobody wants to see in a single elimination play-in scenario.
Let's jump back over to the Eastern Conference and look at the absolute juggernaut of the league right now, the Detroit Pistons. They take down the Orlando Magic 106-92. This secures their 6th straight road victory and bumps their league-leading record to 45-14. But looking at the shot charts in our notes, this was very much a tale of two halves.
It really was. And this game is a perfect case study in why Detroit is sitting atop the entire league. It is all about in-game coaching adjustments and structural resilience.
The Pistons started this game horrifically from the perimeter. They opened woo for 15 from three-point range. Can you imagine the frustration in that building? Because of that cold streak, they were trailing 57-50 at the half. But then we see J.B. Bickerstaff go into the locker room and completely flip the script against Jamal Mosley's drop coverage.
Let's explain what was happening there. Orlando was sitting back in drop coverage. For those tracking the tactical shifts, that's when the defending big man essentially retreats deep into the paint during a pick and roll. You're practically conceding the mid-range jumper or the pull-up three just to make sure nobody gets an easy layup. It worked brilliantly in the first half when the Pistons couldn't buy a bucket from outside. But Bickerstaff adjusted. He didn't just yell at his guys to shoot better. He recognized that if the threes weren't falling, they needed to relentlessly attack the paint and force the Magic defense to physically collapse. The Pistons altered their screening angles, setting them lower on the floor, and pushed the pace to get downhill before Orlando's drop coverage could even get fully set.
And the personnel really stepped up to execute that shift. Detroit was without Isaiah Stewart, who was serving the final game of his suspension. So Jalen Duren steps into that void in the middle and delivers 16 points and 10 rebounds. Meanwhile, Cade Cunningham was masterful, orchestrating everything with 29 points and 11 assists.
Cunningham diagnosed that drop coverage in the second half and picked it apart with absolute surgical precision. He knew exactly when to float the lob to Duren and when to take the space given to him. But we also have to look at the massive flaw Orlando exposed in themselves. The Magic really felt the absence of Anthony Black, who missed the game with a strained quad.
I want to dig into that because how does missing one guard, just a secondary piece, cause a 14-point swing in the second half for a playoff team?
It is all about the cascading effect of losing secondary playmaking. Without Black to handle the ball, initiate the offense, and relieve pressure, Paolo Banchero was forced into an incredibly high-usage do-it-all role. Banchero goes from being the tip of the spear to being the entire spear, the handle, and the guy throwing it. He had a great statistical game scoring the ball, 24 points and 11 rebounds. But Detroit recognized he was the sole initiator. They ratcheted up their aggressive ball pressure, constantly throwing multiple bodies and aggressive traps at him the moment he crossed half court.
And he turned it over 9 times.
Right. When your primary scorer is also forced to be your only playmaker against an elite physical defense like Detroit's, you are going to bleed turnovers. And those 9 turnovers turned directly into transition points that fueled Detroit's massive second-half comeback.
It just shows how fragile these offensive ecosystems can be. You remove one cog and the entire structure wobbles. All right, we have to move into our rapid fire segment. And based on the sheer volume of history that happened on Sunday, we are going deep on these. We have 6 highly consequential games with massive playoff implications. First up, the Memphis Grizzlies beat the Indiana Pacers 125-106, sweeping the season series. W. Clayton Jr. was passing out of his mind, tying the franchise rookie record with 14 assists, and Taylor Hendricks drops 19 off the bench.
We need to pause and really appreciate what Clayton Jr. is doing here. For a rookie to tie a franchise assist record shows an elite level of vision and processing speed that you rarely see in a first-year player. The NBA game is incredibly fast. Defensive rotations happen in milliseconds. When a rookie can manipulate a veteran NBA defense with his eyes, look off the weak side help, and create 14 high-quality, efficient looks for his teammates, it completely accelerates the development timeline of that entire franchise. He isn't just running plays. He's reading the floor like a 10-year veteran. That level of floor generalship elevates everyone around him, as we saw with Hendricks getting 19 off the bench.
That vision is just unteachable. Moving on, the Portland Trail Blazers get completely dismantled by the Atlanta Hawks 135-101. The Hawks dropped 44 points in the first quarter alone. The game was effectively over before the second quarter started. Onyeka Okongwu explodes for 25 points, hitting 7 of 12 from deep. And Jonathan Kuminga had a viral windmill dunk in transition while dropping 20 points off the bench.
The Okongwu stat line is the key to that entire blowout. A center stepping out and hitting 7 three-pointers completely breaks traditional defensive coverages. Think about the geometry of the court. If your rim protector has to close out all the way to the three-point line because he has to respect Okongwu's jumper, the entire paint is left wide open. The defense is stretched to its absolute breaking point. That is exactly why Kuminga had the runway for a viral windmill dunk. It isn't just about highlights. It is directly connected to the spacing created by extreme positional versatility. When your 5-man is a sniper, the opposing center is essentially standing out by the popcorn machine, leaving the rim completely unprotected.
Next, we have a tight, gritty game in Brooklyn. The Cavaliers beat the Nets 106-102. Cleveland's interior defense flat out saved the day down the stretch. Jarrett Allen puts up 20 points and 6 rebounds, and Evan Mobley had 17 points and 13 rebounds. They just built a wall and shut the door on Brooklyn in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, James Harden manages the game beautifully for Cleveland with 22 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists.
Having 2 elite big men in Allen and Mobley, who can both defend the rim with elite verticality and switch out onto the perimeter when necessary, is Cleveland's ultimate superpower. In a close fourth quarter, when the game naturally slows down and becomes a half-court execution test, being able to rely on those 2 to generate consecutive stops is a massive competitive advantage. They essentially shrink the floor for the opponent. And look at Harden. He is fully embracing that pure floor general role. He's flirting with a triple-double, not by dominating the ball, but by ensuring those bigs get the ball in their exact preferred spots. He is the architect, and Allen and Mobley are the enforcers.
Over in Chicago, the Bulls cruised past the Milwaukee Bucks 120-97. Giannis Antetokounmpo was out with an illness, and Doc Rivers' Bucks really struggled to find any sort of identity without him, shooting an abysmal 36% from the floor. The Bulls, meanwhile, were led by Josh Giddey, who drops a massive triple-double, 20 points, 14 rebounds, 10 assists, and Colin Sexton pours in 22 points.
This game exposes the fundamental vulnerability of the Bucks' roster construction. When you remove Giannis from the equation, you remove both their primary rim pressure on offense and their ultimate defensive safety valve on the other end. Shooting 36% indicates they were forced to settle for contested perimeter jumpers because they had absolutely nobody who could collapse the Chicago defense and kick it out. On the flip side, Giddey's massive triple-double highlights why rebounding guards are the ultimate transition cheat code. When your point guard secures 14 defensive rebounds, he doesn't need an outlet pass. The transition offense starts immediately the moment the ball touches his hands, which keeps the Bucks' defense scrambling the entire night.
Down in Texas, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander drops 30 points to lead the Thunder past the Mavericks, 100-87, keeping Oklahoma City atop the West at 47-15.
What Shai is doing this season is fascinating because he actively breaks modern defensive algorithms. Every analytics department in the league tells their defense to force opponents into contested mid-range jumpers. The math says it is an inefficient shot. But Shai shoots the mid-range at a clip that makes the math look stupid. He gets to his spots with such unorthodox rhythm that defenses simply cannot speed him up or slow him down. He dictates the terms.
And finally, Joe Mazzulla's Celtics roll over a Sixers team that was missing Joel Embiid, winning 114-98. I want to highlight Jaylen Brown's post-game quote here. He went out of his way to praise Neemias Queta, saying Queta played the best game of his career.
The Celtics system under Mazzulla demands that every single player on the floor, from the superstars down to the end of the bench, can process reads at lightning speed. It is a pure read-and-react offense based on spacing. For a rotational big like Queta to earn that kind of specific, unprompted praise from Jaylen Brown means he wasn't just blindly executing a set play. He was actively making high-level reads, slipping screens at the perfect moment, and capitalizing on the immense spacing that the Celtics stars naturally provide. It shows a deep level of team cohesion.
That wraps up the massive Sunday slate. But you know the action on the hardwood is only half the story in this league. Let's move into segment 2, controversies and news. We are going to debate the implications of the verified quotes, the injuries, and the roster moves that are fundamentally shifting the landscape. Let's start with the war of words.
This is exactly the time of year where the intensity of the playoff race starts spilling over from the court right into the press conferences. The margin for error is gone, and the nerves are frayed.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's bring up the escalating tension between the Denver Nuggets and the Oklahoma City Thunder. These are two absolute titans fighting for supremacy in the West. Nikola Jokic recently commented on a defensive play involving Lou Dort, calling a move by Dort unnecessary and defending his own physical reaction as necessary. But it didn't stop with the players. Nuggets head coach David Adelman escalated things significantly. He publicly criticized the Thunder for what he called a ridiculous, malicious cheap shot at Jokic.
This is a fascinating dynamic because it highlights the deep tactical rivalry brewing between the West's elite. You have a massive clash of styles. You have a player like Jokic who processes the game slower, more methodically, operating out of the half-court with brilliant precision. Then you have a team like the Thunder who are aggressive, relentlessly physical, and highly disruptive on the perimeter with guys like Dort who are built like linebackers. There is inevitably going to be friction when those two styles meet.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Is Adelman actually furious about one specific play from Dort, or is he just playing the long game? You complain loudly in March, so the referees call it tighter in May.
It is absolutely a preemptive strike, without a doubt. If Denver and OKC meet in a 7-game playoff series, the entire series will hinge on exactly how much physicality the officials allow on the perimeter. Adelman is planting the seed right now. He is launching a public lobbying effort. He wants the league office and the referees to hyper-monitor how Dort and the Thunder defend Jokic. He is trying to set the narrative early that Oklahoma City's physical point-of-attack defense crosses the line into being malicious. It is gamesmanship at its absolute finest, but it also reveals a genuine underlying frustration with OKC's defensive tactics. Denver knows OKC has the personnel to make them uncomfortable.
Moving from frustration with opponents to frustration within your own locker room. We talked earlier about Paolo Banchero's 9 turnovers and his struggles against Detroit's adjustments. Well, after that loss, Banchero explicitly called out the Magic's lack of communication. I want to read his exact quote from the post-game presser. Teams, a lot of times, adjust at halftime, and I think that's why we struggled a lot in the second half, just because we don't really adjust to their adjustments. What does a highly publicized quote like that mean for Jamal Mosley's locker room when you're trying to gear up for the playoffs?
That is a staggering shot across the bow from a franchise cornerstone. It is one thing to stand at the podium and say, we didn't execute in the second half, I need to be better. It is entirely different to explicitly state we don't adjust to their adjustments. That is a direct public critique of the coaching staff's in-game tactical flexibility. It points to a severe lack of structural communication between the bench and the floor.
So if you're Jamal Mosley, how do you handle that Monday morning?
You have to address it immediately before it festers. You have to bring Paolo into the film room, sit him down, and show him the exact adjustments that were called from the sideline. You have to figure out if the breakdown was in the scheme itself, did the coaches fail, or did the players fail to communicate the changes while on the floor. Either way, airing that out in the media reveals a crack in the armor of a team that is desperately trying to hold on to its playoff positioning. It shows a lack of trust.
From internal frustration to supreme, unfiltered confidence. Isaiah Stewart of the Pistons boldly claimed this weekend that he is the best defensive player in the NBA. Now, looking at the standings, Detroit has a 45-14 record, which is the best in the entire league. Does team success alone validate a massive individual claim like that?
It absolutely gives him the platform to make the claim without getting laughed out of the room. The Pistons' defense has been utterly ferocious all season, and Stewart is the beating heart of their physicality. When you are the defensive anchor of the #1 team in the league, you have the right to put your name at the top of the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. But honestly, it is a psychological tactic as much as an analytical one. By making that statement publicly, he is setting the tone for his entire team. He is letting everyone in that locker room know that their identity, their path to a championship, is forged exclusively on the defensive end of the floor. He is taking ownership of their culture.
And then we have James Harden in Cleveland. He addressed some recent retirement rumors floating around the league with a very cryptic quote. He said, "I know it's coming soon." But he heavily emphasized that his current singular focus is entirely on winning a championship with the Cavaliers.
That is the profound perspective of a veteran who deeply knows his own mortality in this league. Harden acknowledging the end of his career actually takes a massive amount of pressure off his shoulders. He isn't out there chasing individual statistical milestones or trying to secure one last maximum contract anymore. He is chasing the one legacy-defining thing missing from his resume. When a player of his caliber and history embraces that singular focus, it can be incredibly galvanizing for a locker room. He is effectively telling the Cavaliers organization, I'm here to be the missing piece. Whatever role that requires, whether it's scoring 25 or just getting 10 assists, I will do it.
Now we have to move into the injury ward, and this is where the balance of power truly shifts across the landscape. We have to start with the absolute devastation in Dallas. It is confirmed by the team today. Kyrie Irving is officially out for the remainder of the season with a torn ACL.
This is a catastrophic blow. There is no other way to phrase it. It alters the entire trajectory of their franchise. The Mavericks are already sitting at 21-39, struggling mightily to find any consistent traction this season. Losing Irving removes their elite secondary scoring, their late-game shot creation, and their crucial counterbalance to their entire offensive system. Tactically, it means opposing defenses no longer have to pick their poison. They don't have to respect the weak side. They can load up entirely on the remaining threats and shrink the floor. This fundamentally ends any lingering hope Dallas had of making a miraculous late-season push, and more importantly, it forces the front office to entirely reevaluate their timeline and roster construction heading into a very uncertain summer.
It is just brutal news for a guy who has battled so hard. Moving out west to Golden State, Stephen Curry's knee continues to be a massive looming issue. He's dealing with persistent runner's knee and will be reevaluated in 10 days. Look at this stat in our notes. The Warriors are 8-13 in the games he has missed this season. Can they survive the intense Western Conference play-in race without him for another week and a half?
They are in severe red alert danger. An 8-13 record without Curry shows exactly how dependent Steve Kerr's offensive system is on Curry's unique gravitational pull. Without him scrambling defenses, drawing double teams 30 feet from the hoop, and creating open driving lanes for everyone else, their half-court offense completely stagnates. It becomes predictable. To survive the play-in race over these next 10 days, they're going to have to rely heavily on transition basketball and completely lock down on the defensive end because they simply cannot generate the same high-efficiency half-court looks without number 30 orchestrating the chaos.
And the injury hits just keep coming across the league. Joel Embiid is diagnosed with a strained right oblique and will miss at least the next 3 games for the Sixers. Memphis loses Zach Edey to surgery on his left ankle. Utah's Lauri Markkanen has a hip impingement and is out for 2 full weeks. Sacramento's Keegan Murray has a sprained ankle, also out 2 weeks. And Cleveland is currently managing Donovan Mitchell's lingering groin issue.
This is the brutal war of attrition that is the NBA regular season. The teams that ultimately succeed and raise the banner aren't just the most talented on paper. They are the deepest and the most tactically adaptable. When you lose a focal point like an Embiid or a Markkanen, your entire offensive playbook has to change overnight. It severely tests the depth of your bench, the resilience of your locker room, and the creativity of your coaching staff to manufacture points in entirely different ways. The teams that can seamlessly pivot to Plan B are the ones that survive March.
Which brings us nicely to our final segment of the news, the transaction wire. As teams deal with these mounting injuries, front offices are scrambling to make moves. Darius Garland, who the Clippers acquired in the James Harden trade, is reportedly set to finally make his debut on Monday after recovering from a toe issue.
This is a fascinating mid-season injection of top-tier talent. Tyronn Lue now has to integrate Garland's elite playmaking and perimeter shooting into an offense that is already humming, as we just saw against the Pelicans with Kawhi Leonard. Garland provides dynamic pick-and-roll creation. Tactically, this means the Clippers can stagger their star minutes. They can ensure they have elite primary shot creation on the floor for all 48 minutes of the game, completely eliminating those offensive lulls when Kawhi goes to the bench.
We also saw the Warriors give Guy Santos a 3-year, $15 million extension, locking him up for the foreseeable future. And the Mavericks, immediately dealing with the fallout of that Kyrie injury, signed Ryan Nembhard while waiving Tyus Jones to make room.
The Santos extension is just smart, forward-thinking business by Golden State. They are securing rotational depth on a very manageable contract before the cap spikes, and the Dallas move completely reflects the chaos of their current situation. They are shuffling the deck chairs on a sinking ship, trying to find literally any combination of guard play that can stabilize the offense in Irving's massive absence.
All right, we have analyzed the past, we have debated the news, now let's look ahead. Segment 3. We are previewing the critical 4-game Monday slate for March 2, 2026. This is pure basketball preview. We are looking strictly at the tactical dynamics, the coaching matchups, and the playoff implications on the floor tonight. Matchup number 1. The Los Angeles Clippers are on the road against the Golden State Warriors. The stakes here are absolutely critical. This is a Western Conference play-in bloodbath. The Clippers are holding the 9th seed. The Warriors are clinging to the 8th seed. Tyronn Lue going head-to-head with Steve Kerr.
This game is going to be a high-level chess match from the opening tip. We just talked about Darius Garland making his long-awaited debut for the Clippers. The immediate question for Ty Lue is, how do you integrate a ball-dominant guard like Garland into an offensive flow that is already functioning at a high level with Kawhi Leonard? You don't want to disrupt the incredible rhythm they established against New Orleans. Lue will likely use Garland to relentlessly attack the non-Kawhi minutes, running high pick and roll to exploit a Warriors defense that is already stretched thin and missing its offensive engine.
Right, because on the other side of the floor, Steve Kerr has to figure out how to generate enough offense to keep pace without Stephen Curry. How do they actually do that against a Clippers team that has massive momentum and length?
The Warriors have to manufacture pure chaos. Without Curry's half-court gravity pulling defenders away from the basket, Kerr has to rely on complex split actions, constant exhausting off-ball motion, and aggressive defensive disruption to create easy transition opportunities. If the Warriors slow the ball down and let the Clippers set their half-court defense, Los Angeles has the overwhelming length to completely smother them. Golden State needs this game to be fast, messy, and highly unpredictable to steal a win.
Matchup 2. The Boston Celtics travel to face the Milwaukee Bucks. Stakes are huge for both sides. Boston is 40-20, looking to firmly lock down the East's 2 seed. The Bucks are sitting at 26-33, desperately trying to snap a frustrating 2-game skid.
This game comes down to a fundamental clash of basketball philosophies. You have Joe Mazzulla's highly efficient 5-out spacing offense going directly against Doc Rivers' traditional paint-packing defensive shell.
I want to talk about Mazzulla's math problem for a second because it's fascinating. But the ultimate swing factor here is Giannis Antetokounmpo. He missed Sunday's game with an illness. If he doesn't play tonight, what happens to Milwaukee?
If Giannis doesn't play, Milwaukee simply lacks the secondary playmaking to keep pace with Boston's math problem. Let's define that. Boston presents a literal math problem to their opponents. If they shoot 45 three-pointers in a game and you only shoot 30, they mathematically win the game even if they shoot a slightly lower overall percentage. 3 is greater than 2. The Celtics are going to launch threes. If the Bucks don't have Giannis collapsing the defense with his drives to generate wide-open looks on the other end to keep pace, they will get mathematically blown off their home floor. Rivers' defensive shell relies on having elite rim protection, but Missoula's five-out spacing actively pulls those rim protectors out of the paint and onto the perimeter. It is an absolute nightmare matchup for Milwaukee if they aren't at full strength to punish Boston inside.
Matchup 3. The Denver Nuggets head to Utah to play the Jazz. The Nuggets are 37-24, but they are suddenly on a 2-game losing streak after getting run off the floor by Minnesota. They desperately need a get-right game to stabilize.
And this matchup is the perfect opportunity for exactly that. Nikola Jokic is primed for a massive statement bounce-back game. The Jazz front court is severely depleted right now, missing Lauri Markkanen with that hip impingement. Look for David Edelman to establish Denver's interior dominance from the very opening tip. He is not going to let this turn into a track meet like the Minnesota game.
So you expect Denver to just methodically pound the ball inside and dare Utah to stop it?
Absolutely, without hesitation. We saw them score 60 points in the paint against Minnesota, even in a loss. Against a weakened Utah front line missing its best player, Jokic should be able to operate in the post will. He will either score with brutal efficiency or he will effortlessly pick apart the inevitable double teams to find wide-open shooters on the perimeter. Denver needs to actively control the tempo, execute flawlessly in the half court, and use their massive size advantage to methodically dismantle the Jazz piece by piece.
Final game of the Monday slate. The Houston Rockets are on the road against the Washington Wizards. Houston is sitting pretty at 37-22, trying to hold their top 3 standing in the bloodbath that is the West. Washington is struggling mightily at 16-43, having lost 4 straight games.
This is the kind of game where Ime Udoka's suffocating defensive principles take center stage and completely overwhelm an opponent. Udoka has built a relentless culture of accountability and physical defense in Houston. They are facing a Wizards team that is completely lost right now, trying to find any semblance of an identity amid a long losing streak. The tactical dynamic here is painfully simple. Houston will apply immense, exhausting ball pressure from the inbound, forcefully deny the initial passing actions, and force Washington into terrible, late shot clock isolation plays. Unless the Wizards miraculously catch fire from the perimeter, Houston's sheer defensive discipline should entirely suffocate them.
We have covered the games, we have debated the controversies, and we have previewed tonight's massive slate. As we march toward the 2026 playoffs, let's zoom out to the 30,000-foot view. We talked about this at the top of the show. Give me your final overarching take on the state of the league right now. What is the defining narrative of this season?
If you truly want to understand the overarching meta of the NBA right now, you have to look closely at the MVP race, because those top candidates perfectly define the league's evolution. We are looking at a 3-headed monster, and each player represents a completely different pinnacle of basketball evolution. First, you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's historic true shooting efficiency, proving that elite mid-range navigation and relentless rim pressure can break modern defensive algorithms. Second, you have Luka Doncic's unparalleled usage-to-production ratio, demonstrating the absolute mastery of the heliocentric offensive model we discussed earlier. And third, you have Victor Wembanyama's generational defensive ceiling, highlighted by that absurd plus 9.5 on-off defensive impact that literally deters players from entering the paint.
It's just a completely different game now.
It is. Here is the real, profound takeaway from studying these sources. The era of the single dominant archetype is completely dead. You cannot win a championship in 2026 simply by being the best at one specific style of play. The championship won't be won by the team with the best traditional starting 5. It will be won by the team that can seamlessly toggle between 3 entirely different tactical identities on the floor. You need a lethal fast break identity to punish slow teams, a meticulous half-court execution identity for late-game situations, and a switch-everything defensive identity to survive the perimeter onslaught. If you only have one pitch, the elite headers in this league are going to knock you out of the park.
That brings up a genuinely fascinating point. I want to turn this final thought over to you, the listener. When you look at the standings today and you see teams like the Detroit Pistons and the Oklahoma City Thunder absolutely dominating, teams built on incredible depth, relentless, physical defense, and highly interchangeable parts, are we witnessing the death of traditional basketball systems in favor of extreme, positionless versatility? Are the days of the rigid set playbook officially over in favor of read and react chaos? It is something to chew on as you watch the matchups unfold tonight. That completely wraps up today's deep dive into the source material. Thank you for joining us here on the Orange Ball. We will be back tomorrow with more deep tactical breakdowns, more intense debates, and absolutely everything you need to navigate the ever-shifting NBA landscape. Enjoy the games tonight.